My name is Harper Ellis, and I'm 32 years old. Have you ever been erased from your own family story? Last month, at my sister's extravagant wedding reception, the highlight of her whirlwind romance, the crown jewel of our family's social calendar, I was literally booted from the family photo lineup. In front of 150 guests. Not for making a fuss. Not for showing up late. But for being just a freelance graphic artist, who apparently embarrassed the family. Meanwhile, her new stepson, a high-powered investment banker, slid right into my spot. And into my rightful role, managing our family's $3 million art collection. I stood there trembling. Humiliated beyond words. But what happened next? When my quiet, unassuming husband rose to his feet and walked straight to the DJ's microphone, the entire vineyard fell silent. What he revealed, about who he really was, changed everything in less than 60 seconds. The look on my mother's face, the gasps from the crowd, and my stepbrother's champagne flute, slipping from his hand, shattering on the stone patio. I'll never forget it. If you're watching this, please subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to know. Have you ever been rejected by your own family, just for not being successful enough? That moment plays in my mind like a slow-motion scene from one of those dramatic family films. The kind where the underdog finally gets their due. I could almost feel the warm Napa Valley breeze on my skin again, carrying the scent of blooming grapes, mixed with the perfume of fresh-cut flowers from centerpieces, each one probably costing more than my entire monthly art supply budget. My hands were shaking as I clutched my simple clutch bag, the one I'd found on sale at a thrift store in San Francisco, trying to blend into a sea of designer gowns and tailored suits. The humiliation burned deep, like a fresh wound that just wouldn't stop throbbing. How could my own mother do this? The woman who had raised me, who had once told me to chase my dreams, now reduced me to an outsider at my own sister's big day. Her words echoed in my head. Harper, dear, we need to present a united front of success. Your artistic pursuits just don't fit the picture tonight. She said it with that polished smile she reserved for cocktail parties and board meetings. But her eyes? They carried that same old disappointment. The same look she gave me years ago when I chose art school over business college. And there was my stepbrother, Derek, smirking as he slid into my place for the photos. His Armani suit gleaming beneath the string lights. Don't worry, Harper, he whispered, dripping with false sympathy. I'll make sure the collection goes to someone who can actually monetize it. Monetize it. As if our family's cherished paintings and sculptures were nothing more than assets on a spreadsheet, rather than the pieces that had inspired my childhood sketches in our old Boston brownstone. Guests murmured. Some threw me pitying glances. Others chuckled awkwardly, as if it were all some light-hearted family joke. But it wasn't. It cut to the core, reminding me of all those holiday dinners where Mom paraded Derek's Wall Street wins, while brushing off my gallery shows as mere hobbies. The pain twisted inside me, a blend of anger and sorrow, making my chest tighten as I fought back tears. Why did following my passion make me less worthy? In that instant, standing alone amid the laughter and the clinking of glasses, I felt invisible. Erased. Exactly as she intended. But then, the DJ's music faded for toasts. And Liam, my husband, always the steady one, the man who fueled my late-night design sessions with coffee and quiet encouragement, rose from his chair. His face calm, but in his eyes, that determined glint I'd first seen on our very first date, at a tiny art fair in Brooklyn. The crowd hushed as he approached the mic. And in those 60 seconds, everything shifted. He didn't raise his voice. He simply spoke truth, revealing layers of himself I'd never known. My mother's champagne flute slipped from her hand, shattering with a crack that echoed my breaking heart. Derek's smug smile crumbled into shock, his hand frozen mid-gesture. Gasps rippled through the crowd like a wave, phones already rising to capture the drama. It was surreal. Cinematic even. As if the universe itself had scripted this reversal just for me. That night wasn't just about the wedding. It was the culmination of years of feeling undervalued. Years of pushing through freelance gigs in my tiny Oakland studio, while enduring Mom's subtle digs over Sunday brunch. When are you going to get a real job, Harper? Something stable. Like Derek? She'd ask, her tone dressed up as concern, but laced with judgment. I replayed those words during quiet nights, staring at my canvases, wondering if I was foolish to choose creativity over corporate ladders. But Liam's revelation? It validated everything. The late nights. The rejections. The quiet pride in my work. The humiliation that had me shaking. Transformed into a quiet strength. A reminder that my path, though different, was valid. And as the murmurs of the crowd swelled around me, I finally felt it. Seen. Truly seen. For the first time. In that family circle. Now, let me take you back to that night. The sprawling vineyard at Sunset Ridge Estate in Napa Valley sparkled with elegance. Twinkling fairy lights draped over ancient oak trees, casting a golden glow over long banquet tables dressed in crisp white linens, each adorned with cascading roses and eucalyptus. Every centerpiece, with its artisanal touches, probably cost more than my weekly groceries from the farmer's market. The Sunset Ridge Estate in Napa Valley glowed with an almost magical elegance that evening. Fairy lights twinkled like stars, draped across ancient oak trees, casting a warm golden sheen over long banquet tables dressed in crisp white linens, each one adorned with cascading roses, eucalyptus, and delicate baby's breath. The air carried the sweet scent of blooming grapes, and the faint tang of expensive wine, mingling with the soft hum of classical music from a string quartet tucked near the vineyard's edge. This wasn't just any wedding. This was my sister Lauren's grand moment, a showcase of our family's social standing. And my mother, Eleanor, had ensured every detail screamed prestige. From the hand-calligraphed invitations to a guest list of 150 Bay Area entrepreneurs, art collectors, even a few B-list celebrities snapping selfies for their Instagram stories. Liam, my husband, and I arrived 15 minutes late, thanks to a snarl of traffic on Highway 29. I smoothed down my navy chiffon dress. The nicest one I owned. Bought 3 years ago for a small gallery opening in Oakland, where my digital illustrations had earned a modest award. It was simple. Elegant enough. But standing among that sea of designer gowns, I felt like a thrift store painting hanging beside a Monet. Liam looked sharp in his plain black suit, the same one he'd worn to every formal event since our own wedding 5 years ago. I caught him glancing at his phone again, his brow slightly furrowed. "Everything okay with work?" I asked, as we stepped onto the cobblestone path leading toward the reception. "Just some last-minute details," he said, squeezing my hand with that reassuring warmth I always leaned into. "Nothing to worry about, Harper." His voice was calm, but in his eyes, I caught something I couldn't quite place. Focus, maybe, or anticipation. The vineyard buzzed with energy. Guests mingled beneath lantern light, their laughter blending with the clink of champagne flutes. I spotted art dealers from San Francisco, a tech mogul who just bought one of my family's prized paintings, even a lifestyle blogger snapping photos of the lavish dessert table. A massive floral arch framed the dance floor. Above it, a banner read, "Celebrating Lauren and James, a union of love and legacy." My mother had orchestrated every moment to cement our family's place in this elite circle. As we approached the entrance, I saw her, Eleanor, my mother. She stood like a queen in a shimmering emerald gown that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her pearl necklace caught the light with every calculated tilt of her head. Her laugh, polished, practiced. Beside her was Brooke, her stepdaughter from her second marriage, dazzling in a sleek gold sequin dress that hugged her frame like it had been sewn in Paris. They looked like they'd stepped out of a Vogue spread. That effortless glamour I never quite mastered. "Harper." My mother's voice carried that familiar blend of warmth and critique as she spotted us. Her smile tightened at the edges. "You made it." "Of course, Mom," I said, trying to match her enthusiasm. "Wouldn't miss Lauren's big day." But her gaze swept down my dress, lingering on the slightly faded hem. Her lips pursed in that subtle way that always made my stomach twist. "How charming of you to come," she said, her tone dripping with politeness. "Brooke's been here for an hour already, networking with the collectors." Brooke flashed a perfect smile, her diamond earrings glinting. "You know how it is, Harper. Got to make those connections early." Brooke, the successful one. The investment banker who just closed a multi-million-dollar deal for an art fund, according to Mom's constant updates at family dinners. I remembered Christmas 2 years ago, when Mom spent the entire meal raving about Brooke's promotion, while my solo art show at a local cafe went completely unmentioned. The memory stung, sharp and cold, like a paper cut you don't notice, until it burns. Traffic was rough, I began to explain, my voice quieter than I wanted. No need for excuses, Mom cut in smoothly, already turning back to a cluster of guests. Let's get you to your table. As we weaved through the crowd, I noticed a photographer snapping candids near the floral arch. His lens locked on Brooke as she laughed with a gallery owner. Liam's phone buzzed again. He glanced at it, his expression unreadable. Like he was waiting for a signal. Something about the night felt off. Mom's overly bright smile. The way she avoided looking directly at me. The way Brooke's hand rested, almost possessively, on a collector's arm, as if she owned the evening. My chest tightened with a familiar unease. The same unease that always crept in during family gatherings, when I felt like an outsider in my own story. I didn't know it yet, but I was about to be erased entirely from my family's narrative. Right there, under the Napa stars. Have you ever felt judged for how you look, or for what you do? Like your choices somehow make you less? Drop a comment below. Share your story. I'd love to hear it. For now, let me take you deeper into that night. I had no idea. I was about to be written out of my own family's legacy. The place cards at the family head table gleamed, like tiny indictments under the soft lantern light. I scanned them once. Then again. A third time. With each pass, my stomach sank deeper. Eleanor Ellis. Brooke Dalton. Derek Hargrove. James Whitaker. The groom's side. Art collectors. Major donors. But no. Harper Ellis. There must be some mistake with the seating, I said, forcing my voice to stay light, even as a knot of dread tightened in my chest. My mother appeared at my elbow like a shadow. Her smile, sharp and unyielding, like cut glass catching the evening sun. Oh, didn't I mention? We had to make some last-minute adjustments. Space constraints, you understand, dear? She gestured smoothly, her manicured nails flashing. But her eyes held that calculated coolness I knew too well, from childhood scoldings in our old Boston home. I glanced back at the table. 8 chairs. 7 cards. 1 empty seat. Right beside Brooke. Brooke, already perched there. Her hand resting casually on the chair as she laughed with Victor Lang, the chairman of our family's art collection trust. She leaned in, her laughter light, practiced, talking about some high-stakes auction she'd orchestrated last quarter. But I'm your daughter, I whispered, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. Echoing the same plea I'd once made when she skipped my art school graduation for a business retreat in the Hamptons. Of course you are, Harper, she replied, her tone patronizing, as if explaining something obvious to a child. You're at table 14. Over there, near the kitchen entrance. She pointed to a smaller setup, half hidden behind a decorative olive tree, clustered with freelance artists and gallery assistants from the local scene. Won't that be perfect? She added smoothly. You'll have so much in common, sketches and side gigs, I'm sure. Liam's jaw clenched beside me. His hand found mine, firm, grounding me in the swirl of humiliation. This is your sister's wedding, he said softly, his voice steady but edged with something protective, like a quiet storm building. And we're delighted you could join, my mother cut in, pivoting away on her heels. Brooke, darling, tell Mr. Lang about your latest acquisition win. Brooke looked up, her smile impeccable, like she'd practiced it in front of a mirror for boardroom battles. Oh, Harper, I didn't spot you there. Don't you look comfortable? Her eyes swept my 3-year-old dress, lingering, long enough to sting. Her words laced with that faux kindness that barely masked superiority. The insult landed like a subtle brushstroke of disdain. It pulled me straight back to family Thanksgivings, where Brooke dominated conversations with tales of Wall Street triumphs, while my digital art commissions were dismissed as cute hobbies. I froze, staring at the absent place card as if it were a warning of something deeper. My heart pounded in rhythm with the distant string quartet. My exclusion wasn't an oversight. My mother had turned it into a practical decision, as if family bonds were negotiable assets. Liam stepped closer, his presence a quiet anchor. Where exactly is Harper supposed to sit? He asked. Table 14 is just fine, my mother replied, avoiding my gaze. Her fingers adjusted her pearl necklace nervously. Plenty of creative types there. Creative types. Code for the ones who didn't matter. the artist scraping by on freelance gigs, while Brooke sealed deals in corner offices. Brooke's laughter peeled out again as she touched Victor Lang's arm, diving into corporate talk about art sponsorships. She was in my seat, claiming my moment, and the world around us seemed utterly fine with it. Liam's phone vibrated in his pocket. He glanced at it briefly, and something shifted in his eyes. A spark of resolve. "Come on," I whispered, tugging at his sleeve. "Let's just go to table 14. But deep down, I couldn't shake the sinking feeling. I'd just been downgraded in my own family's hierarchy. The pain echoed like an unfinished canvas, blank, waiting for the next brush of hurt. That rejection replayed in my mind as we moved away. The fairy lights blurred through unshed tears. It wasn't just the seat. It was years of feeling like the odd one out, the artist's daughter in a family of dealmakers. I remembered my first big commission. Calling Mom, thrilled, from my tiny Oakland studio, the air filled with the smell of fresh paint and coffee. She promised to call me back. She never did. The ache twisted again, a familiar weight making my steps heavy on the cobblestones. Liam squeezed my hand tighter, his thumb tracing soothing circles. But his face held that unreadable focus, like he was piecing together a puzzle I couldn't yet see. As we wove through the crowd, my mother's voice carried over the gentle music, each syllable honed for impact. "This is Brooke, my daughter," she told a cluster of collectors. "Investment banker at Hargrove Capital. She just closed a 7-figure deal for the Metropolitan's modern wing." She paused, deliberately, then added, "Oh, and that's my other daughter Harper," heading to the side table. "She does graphic design, the freelance kind." The way she said freelance made it sound like a flaw, like a lesser pursuit in her achievement-driven world. Liam's grip tightened again. His phone lit up with a message. "Confirmation received. Ready when you are." "What's that?" I asked softly. "Just work," he replied, his tone calm, but carrying an undercurrent I couldn't decipher. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "I'm okay," I lied, forcing a smile. "No, you're not," he said, his blue eyes locking onto mine. "And you shouldn't have to be." From the head table, another wave of laughter erupted. My mother now boasting about Brooke's Yale MBA. Her voice projecting just far enough for our corner to catch every word. "We're just so proud of her drive," she said. "It takes real ambition to climb those heights." Real ambition. As if my late nights in the studio, pouring my soul into designs that touched people's lives, fell short. One of the artists at table 14 leaned over, her dress faintly scented of oil paint. "Family events can be tough," she said gently. I nodded, watching my mother beam as Brooke showed her something on her phone, probably her latest portfolio statement. Meanwhile, I had stacks of client thank you notes in my desk drawer. But those didn't translate into networking clout. Liam typed quickly on his phone, then pocketed it. "Whatever you're thinking," I whispered. "Don't. It's not worth it." He kissed my forehead gently. "You're always worth it." If you've ever been pushed to the edges of your own family, hit like on this video to show your support. It means the world. The humiliation was just beginning, though, because my mother was about to start publicly comparing me to Brooke in ways that cut even deeper. From the cramped corner of table 14, tucked behind the olive tree and the clatter of the kitchen staff, I could hear my mother's voice slicing through the warm Napa Valley air. Each word, crafted to elevate one daughter, while burying another. "This is Brooke," she announced to a cluster of art collectors near the head table, her tone brimming with pride. "My daughter, the investment banker who just closed a 7-figure deal for the Metropolitan's modern wing." She paused, letting admiration ripple through the crowd. Then with a practiced sigh, she added, "And over there's Harper, heading to the back. She does freelance graphic design, you know, the artsy stuff." The way she said, artsy, landed like a slap, turning my passion into something trivial. A childish hobby, unfit for this glittering evening. The sting of her words burned deep, echoing all the countless times she dismissed my work as a fleeting phase. I remembered the summer after college, when I invited her to my very first solo exhibit in a small Oakland gallery. The space smelled of fresh paint and hope, my illustrations lining the walls like pieces of my soul. I'd called her, voice trembling with excitement, only to hear, "Oh, Harper, I'm tied up with a board meeting. I'll swing by another time." She never did. That memory clawed at me now, as I sat at a polyester-covered table, surrounded by other artists who, like me, had been deemed unworthy of the spotlight. My hands gripped the edge of the chair, the wood cool and unyielding, as I fought the urge to shrink into myself. Brooke's laughter rang out from the head table. Sharp. Bright. She leaned toward Victor Lang, the Art Trust chairman, her gold dress catching every flicker of the lanterns. "It's all about strategic acquisitions," she said loudly, so nearby tables could hear. "You have to know when to bid, and when to hold back." My mother nodded approvingly, her pearl necklace glinting with every tilt of her head, as if Brooke's corporate jargon was a masterpiece in itself. The contrast gnawed at me. Brooke, the golden child who turned art into profit. And me, the dreamer, pouring my heart into designs for non-profits and small businesses. Why did my choice to create, to make art that meant something, render me invisible in her eyes? Liam's hand found mine under the table. His fingers warm, steady, grounding me as the hurt swelled. His phone buzzed again. I caught a glimpse of the screen. All set. "Just say the word." "What's going on?" I whispered, barely audible over the string quartet's gentle melody. "Just work," he said, his tone calm, but heavy, like he was holding back a secret meant to shift the tide. "How are you holding up, Harper?" His blue eyes searched mine, steady and sure. The same eyes that had stayed with me in our tiny apartment, sketching late into the night, never once questioning my path. "I'm fine," I lied, my throat tight. But the truth was, I felt like a ghost at my own sister's wedding. The rejection wasn't new. It was the same ache from family dinners when Mom would gush over Brooke's bonuses, while my gallery acceptances were met with a distracted, "That's nice, dear." I could still see our old Boston dining room, the smell of rosemary and roasted chicken, Mom's voice dominating the table as she praised Brooke's latest deal, while my sketchbook sat ignored beside my plate. That same dismissal echoed now, amplified by the 150 eyes around us, some pitying, others oblivious to the drama unfolding in plain sight. From the head table came another burst of laughter. Now my mother was recounting Brooke's Yale MBA to a tech mogul, her voice carrying just far enough to reach our corner. "She's always been so driven," she said, her words a deliberate arrow. "It takes real ambition to make a mark in this world." Real ambition. As if my 60-hour weeks designing logos for community centers, my late nights perfecting illustrations for children's books, somehow counted for less. The word ambition stung, twisting the knife of her judgment even deeper. I thought of the thank you emails from clients, the kids at community art fairs who hugged me, their faces lit up by my drawings. Those moments felt monumental to me. But to her, they were footnotes, unworthy of mention. At our table, Clara, the painter with turquoise streaks in her hair, leaned closer, her voice soft with empathy. "I heard you got into that juried show in San Francisco last year," she said. "That's huge." I managed a small smile. "Yeah, it was." But we both knew the truth. Huge didn't get you a seat at the head table. Not in my mother's world, where success was measured in dollars and deals, not in the lives you touched. Liam's phone lit up again. He typed a quick reply, his face unreadable, but resolute. "Whatever you're thinking," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Don't. It's not worth it." He squeezed my hand tighter. His touch, a quiet promise. "You're worth more than they know." The air around us felt charged, like the moment before a storm breaks. My mother's voice carried again, praising Brooke's latest art fund acquisition to a group of donors. Each word, a reminder of where I stood in her hierarchy. I sat there, surrounded by the clink of glasses and the scent of lavender from the centerpieces, feeling the weight of years of being overlooked settle into my bones. If you've ever been compared to a sibling and found wanting, drop your story in the comments. I'm reading every one. Because what came next, the announcement that shattered everything, was when I realized just how far my mother was willing to go, to erase me from our family's legacy. The string quartet faded, and the vineyard fell silent, as my mother stepped onto the stage. Her emerald gown shimmered beneath the lantern light. She tapped the microphone with practiced grace, commanding instant attention from all 150 guests. "Now, For the evening's big announcement, she said. Her voice swelled with that self-assured tone I'd heard at countless family galas. My breath caught. A flicker of hope sparked, despite the ache already heavy in my chest. This was it. The moment she'd promised me 3 years ago. In our old Boston living room, the smell of her lavender perfume lingering as she told me, Harper, when the time comes, you'll manage the family art collection. Your eye for art is invaluable. As you know, she continued, the Ellis art collection, valued at $3 million, has been a cornerstone of our family's legacy, preserving beauty and culture for generations. Appreciative murmurs rippled through the crowd. Forks paused mid-bite. Wine glasses hovered in the air. $3 million. No small sum, even for this well-heeled Napa audience. Tonight, she said, her smile radiant, I'm thrilled to announce who will take my place as curator when I step back. My heart pounded. Memories flooded in, late nights sketching in my Oakland studio, researching provenance for our Degas and O'Keeffe pieces, drafting proposals to bring the collection into schools. I had poured my soul into preparing for this role, believing this was my chance to prove my passion wasn't just a hobby. After careful consideration, my mother said, her voice brimming with pride, I'm delighted to announce that Brooke Dalton will be joining the trust as my successor. The room erupted in applause. Brooke stood, smoothing her gold dress, waving with the poise of a pageant queen. My mother beamed, dabbing her eyes with theatrical precision, her pearl necklace catching every light. I sat frozen at table 14. The clatter of the kitchen behind me faded into a dull roar. 3 years of preparation, countless hours of study, curating pop-ups, writing grants, bringing art to underserved communities, erased in a single sentence. Brooke. The investment banker who saw paintings as assets to leverage, not stories to tell? I remembered last year's family reunion, her casually dismissing a local artist's work as not liquid enough, while sipping rose. She had never spent a single day in a studio. Never felt how a brushstroke could capture a fleeting emotion. Brooke brings a unique perspective, my mother went on, oblivious to my shock. Her financial expertise and corporate connections will elevate the collection to new heights. Financial expertise. For an art collection meant to inspire, not to be traded like stocks. Liam's hand gripped mine under the table, so tight it almost hurt. His knuckles white against the polyester cloth. That position was yours, he whispered. His voice low but fierce, like a spark catching dry wood. I know, I managed, my throat tight, the words barely audible over the applause. But it wasn't just losing the role. This collection funded community programs, supported emerging artists, preserved pieces that shaped my childhood dreams. Brooke didn't know the difference between impressionism and abstract expressionism. She had never once considered the children who found solace in a paint-splattered community center wall. The pain twisted deeper, pulling me back to that promise 3 years ago. I saw us sitting across from each other at our mahogany dining table. The same table where we'd spent Sundays debating Monet versus Manet. Your passion for art is what this family needs, she had told me then. Her eyes warm, for once. Now that warmth was gone, replaced with a calculated choice, to favor Brooke's resume over my heart. Beside me, Clara, the painter, gasped softly. But you're the artist, she whispered. You understand what this collection means. I did. Which was exactly why I wasn't chosen. Liam stood abruptly. His chair scraped against the stone patio. Excuse me for a moment, he said. His voice edged with something I rarely heard. Steel, wrapped in calm. Where are you going? I asked, my pulse racing. To make a call, he replied, already pulling out his phone. His fingers moved with purpose. This changes things. As he stepped away, I watched Brooke bask in congratulations at the head table. Her smile as polished as the trust's prized sculptures. My inheritance. My legacy. Reduced to her stepping stone. The weight pressed against my chest, heavy, suffocating, as I sat there, surrounded by the clink of glasses and fading music. And I knew. The worst was yet to come. If you've ever lost an opportunity to family favoritism, hit that subscribe button and follow my story. It helps more than you know. I couldn't sit still any longer. The hurt was too raw. And I was about to confront my mother. In front of everyone. I couldn't stay seated any longer. Not with my mother's announcement ringing in my ears. each word a fresh cut to my heart. I pushed back from table 14. The chair scraped against the stone patio. My navy dress caught slightly on the edge. My legs felt unsteady, like they might betray me. But the anger boiling inside propelled me forward. Past the olive tree, past the curious glances of the other artists. The Napa Valley air was warm, thick with the scent of roses and wine. But it did little to cool the fire blazing in my chest. I was done being invisible. Done letting my mother rewrite my place in our family's story. I marched toward the head table. There she was, my mother, chatting with Victor Lang and a cluster of art collectors. Her emerald gown shimmered, as if she were the centerpiece of the entire evening. Brooke stood beside her, laughing lightly, her gold dress catching every flicker of the fairy lights. The crowd's chatter faded as I drew closer. A few heads turned, sensing the tension. "Mom," I said, my voice louder than I intended, cutting through the soft hum of the string quartet. She turned. Her smile faltered. Her pearl necklace glinted as she tilted her head. "Harper dear, what's wrong?" "This isn't the time." "You promised me the collection," I said. My words trembled, but they were clear, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. Gasps rippled through the guests. Forks paused. Glasses hovered mid-sip. I could feel the weight of 150 pairs of eyes. But I pressed on, the memory of her promise fueling me. 3 years ago, you said I'd manage the Ellis art collection. Because of my passion. Because of my knowledge. You said it was my legacy. My voice cracked on legacy, and I hated the vulnerability in it. But I couldn't stop. I pictured our Boston dining room. The smell of lavender perfume. Her rare moment of warmth as she told me, "You're the artist, Harper. This is yours to carry forward." Her expression hardened. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Harper," she said, her voice low but sharp, like a warning shot. "Don't make a scene. The decision's been made. Brooke's expertise in acquisitions makes her the better fit." Brooke stepped forward, her smile syrupy sweet. But her eyes gleamed with triumph. "Oh, Harper, don't be so dramatic," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. "You're an artist. Dreamy. Idealistic. The collection needs someone practical. Someone who can make it profitable." Profitable. The word stung. Reducing our family's cherished paintings, the pieces I'd studied, loved, sketched as a teenager, to mere investments. The crowd murmured. Some nodded in agreement with Brooke. Others shifted uncomfortably. A memory flashed. My high school art show. I'd won first place for a watercolor inspired by our family's O'Keeffe. Mom had been too busy with a client dinner to attend. She sent Brooke instead, who leaned down and whispered, "Cute effort. But it's not exactly a career, is it?" That same dismissive tone echoed now. Amplified. Broadcast in front of this elite Napa crowd. My hands clenched. My nails dug into my palms. The hurt twisted into defiance. "I've spent years preparing for this," I said, my voice rising. "I've curated exhibits. Written grants. Connected with artists. I'm not just some dreamer." My mother sighed. She exchanged a glance with Brooke. Their silent agreement cut deeper than words. "Harper, you're being unrealistic," she said, her voice carrying that polished authority she used in boardrooms. "This is about the family's reputation. Let's not embarrass ourselves further." Embarrass. The word landed like a slap, echoing all the time she'd called my freelance work unstable over Sunday brunch. The smell of coffee mingling with her disapproval. I stood there, my face burning. The vineyard's elegance blurred into nothing but fairy lights and pitying stares. Before I could respond, a security guard approached. His black suit stark against the lantern glow. "Ma'am, please return to your table," he said, professional, firm. My heart sank. The humiliation was complete. I was being escorted away, like an unruly guest at my own sister's wedding. But then, Liam appeared at my side. Steady. His hand brushed mine. "Hold on," he said to the guard. His voice calm, but commanding. And the man stopped in his tracks. Liam turned to my mother. His blue eyes sharp with purpose. "Eleanor," he asked, "can you tell us about the primary donor for the Ellis art collection? The one funding its preservation?" My mother blinked. Caught off guard. Her fingers twitched around her champagne flute. "Well, that's hardly relevant now," she said, forcing a laugh. But her voice wavered. Brooke's smile froze. Her hand tightened on Victor Lang's arm. The crowd leaned in. Phones subtly raised to capture the moment. Liam's question hung in the air, heavy with intent. And I felt a spark of hope, despite the ache in my chest. What was he doing? I remembered his cryptic phone messages. The quiet resolve in his eyes. Something big was coming. And it was about to shake the vineyard to its roots. If you've ever been humiliated in front of a crowd, what would you have done? Drop it in the comments. I'm reading every one. Because what happened next was all Liam. Stepping up to the stage. Taking control. In a way I never saw coming. The vineyard fell silent as Liam stepped onto the small stage. His black suit was slightly rumpled, but his posture steady, like a man who had been waiting for this very moment. He tapped the microphone gently. The soft thump echoed through the Napa Valley night, cutting through the murmurs of 150 guests. "I'd like to say a few words," he began. His voice calm, but carrying a quiet authority that made heads turn. Glasses pause mid-air. My heart raced. Confusion and hope swirled together as I stood near the head table, still reeling from my mother's betrayal. What was he doing? Liam's eyes found mine. For just a moment. Warm. Resolute. Then he turned to the crowd. 5 years ago, he said, I started a project inspired by someone who showed me what it means to live for art. My breath caught. He was talking about me. I remembered those early days in our cramped Oakland apartment. The smell of acrylic paint and instant coffee. Me scraping together every penny from freelance gigs to buy canvases. While Liam worked late on his laptop, coding something he called just a side hustle. He'd watch me sketch. His quiet encouragement a lifeline through countless rejections. That person, he continued, taught me that art isn't just about profit, it's about passion. About telling stories that change lives. The crowd leaned in, intrigued. A few art collectors even nodded thoughtfully. My mother shifted uncomfortably, her champagne flute gripped tightly. Her smile froze, brittle, like porcelain about to crack. Brooke's perfect posture stiffened, her gold dress suddenly losing its shine. Liam's words carried weight. Personal. Pointed. Like a brushstroke revealing hidden truth. I built a platform called Artflow, he said. He paused, and a ripple of recognition swept through the crowd. Artflow. The digital art marketplace that had exploded, connecting independent artists with buyers across the globe. It started, Liam explained, because I saw someone, my wife Harper, pour her soul into her work. Even when it meant skipping meals. Just to afford supplies. My cheeks flushed. The memory of those lean days vivid. Our tiny kitchen table cluttered with paint tubes. Liam brewing cheap coffee at 2 a.m. While I finalized designs for clients who always paid late. He never complained. He always said, "Your art's worth it, Harper." And now, under the fairy lights, he was turning those private moments into a public testament. Artflow was built to lift up artists like her, he said, his voice steady, threaded with conviction. Freelancers who create not for fame or fortune, but because they believe in beauty. In impact. The words landed like a quiet rebuke. Aimed squarely at my mother, and at Brooke, who had just dismissed my work as dreamy and unrealistic. I glanced toward table 14. Clara, the painter, watched with wide eyes, her hands clasped in quiet excitement. The other artists nodded, faces lit with recognition. Freelance life wasn't glamorous, but it was vital. My mother's expression soured. Her fingers twitched around her glass, as if the ground beneath her heels had begun to shift. Brooke leaned toward Victor Lang, whispering something. But her usual confidence faltered. Her smile strained. Liam's story wasn't just about Artflow. It was about me. About every artist sidelined for choosing passion over prestige. I remember the first time I'd shown him my portfolio. In a dim Brooklyn cafe, the smell of espresso grounding us. He had looked me in the eye and said, "This is incredible, Harper. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." That moment felt alive again. His belief in me now echoing across the vineyard. Artflow's success, Liam said, his voice rising, comes from valuing the creators who are too often overlooked. The ones without corporate titles. Without seven-figure deals. The crowd murmured. Some clapped softly. Others exchanged glances. My mother's face paled. Her earlier boast about Brooke's financial expertise now hung awkwardly in the air. She had called me a dreamer. But Liam was reframing that word, turning it into a badge of honor. My heart swelled. The pain of her betrayal eased, if only slightly, replaced with a flicker of pride. Whatever he was building to. It was big. The tension in the vineyard grew heavy. Like the quiet before a canvas reveals its final stroke. If someone has ever stood up for you, when you needed it most, hit that like button. And share your story in the comments. It means everything to hear. Because Liam's next words were about to turn this night upside down. And I wasn't ready for the bombshell he was about to drop. Liam's voice grew steadier. More resolute. He gripped the microphone, and the Napa Valley night seemed to hold its breath around him. What many of you don't know, he said, his eyes sweeping across the crowd of 150 guests, is that I'm not just a supporter of ArtFlow. I'm its founder and CEO. A collective gasp rippled through the vineyard. Glasses clinked as they were set down. Phones lifted to capture the moment. My heart stopped. The world tilted beneath my feet. Liam, my quiet husband, who had spent years coding in our Oakland apartment, who had brushed off his late-night work as just tech stuff, was the mastermind behind ArtFlow Incorporated, a platform that had revolutionized the art world, empowering thousands of independent artists like me. I stood frozen near the head table, my navy dress forgotten, my earlier humiliation drowned out by the weight of his words. My mother's champagne flute slipped from her hand, shattering against the stone patio with a sharp crack that echoed like a gunshot. Her face drained of color. Her polished smile vanished, replaced by raw shock. Her pearl necklace trembled against her collarbone. Brooke's perfect posture crumpled. She clutched Victor Lang's arm as if to steady herself. Her gold dress, no longer a beacon of triumph. As ArtFlow's primary donor, Liam continued, his voice calm but unyielding, I've been funding the Ellis Art Collection's preservation for the last 3 years. But tonight, I'm withdrawing that support. The crowd erupted in murmurs. Some shocked, others nodding in approval. My mother's eyes widened. Her lips parted in silent protest. The collection's mission, Liam said, his gaze locking briefly with mine, a quiet promise in his eyes, was to celebrate art. To uplift creators who pour their souls into their work. But choosing a successor who prioritizes profit over passion doesn't align with those values, or mine. His words cut the air like a blade. A direct rebuke of my mother's decision to hand the collection to Brooke. I remembered the nights Liam and I had talked about the collection's impact. Curled up on our thrift store couch. The smell of jasmine tea in the air. Dreaming of ways to fund community art programs. He had been building something monumental all along. And I had never known. Instead, Liam said, his voice rising with conviction, I'm redirecting ArtFlow's resources to a new initiative, the Harper Ellis Fund for Emerging Artists. My name echoed across the vineyard. My breath caught. Tears pricked my eyes. This fund will support independent artists, people like my wife, people who create not for wealth or status, but because art matters. The crowd burst into applause. The sound swelled like a wave, drowning out the faint clatter of the kitchen staff. Clara from table 14 clapped furiously, her turquoise-streaked hair bouncing. Other artists at our table exchanged wide-eyed looks of pride. My mother's hand shook as she reached for a napkin. Her composure unraveled. Brooke's face froze into panic. Her earlier confidence shattered as Victor Lang stepped back, his expression unreadable. The moment felt cinematic. Like a scene I'd only dared imagine in my darkest moments of doubt. Validation, not just for me, but for every artist dismissed as unrealistic. I thought of the rejection letters piling up in my desk drawer. The clients who haggled over my rates. The family dinners where my mother had called my work cute, while praising Brooke's deals. Liam's announcement rewrote that narrative, placing my passion at the center of something bigger. The fairy lights seemed brighter. The roses scent sharper. As if the world itself had snapped into focus. My mother's earlier words, unrealistic, embarrassing, echoed in my mind. Now powerless against the truth Liam had laid bare. Guests whispered furiously. Some live streaming. others tweeting in real time. The energy in the vineyard shifted. The spotlight no longer on my mother's curated elegance, but on Liam's quiet power. Brooke tried to laugh it off. Her voice high. Strained. "This is unexpected," she said. But no one was listening. My mother's gaze darted to the crowd. Then to me. Her eyes betraying something. Regret? Or fear? The collection, her pride and joy, was slipping from her control. And I felt a strange mix of vindication and sorrow. Liam stepped back from the mic calm. Resolute. He reached for my hand as he returned to my side. "You okay?" he whispered. His voice a lifeline. I nodded. My throat too tight to speak. The weight of his revelation settling in. If this story is hitting home, hit that like button if you're rooting for justice. It keeps this channel going. Because the fallout from Liam's words was about to crash down. And the vineyard was only the beginning. The vineyard's applause faded into a tense hum. Liam stepped off the stage, his hand finding mine, warm, steady, grounding me in the chaos that followed his bombshell. The fairy lights above twinkled almost mockingly. Their golden glow couldn't soften the fallout unfolding at Sunset Ridge Estate. My mother stood frozen near the head table. Her emerald gown no longer commanding. Her champagne flute shattered at her feet, shards glinting like fragments of her broken composure. Brooke's face was a mask of panic. Her gold dress clung to her as she clutched her buzzing phone, the screen lighting up with a call she couldn't ignore. "Liam," I whispered, my voice trembling with awe and disbelief. "You didn't tell me." He squeezed my hand. His blue eyes soft, but resolute. "I wanted it to mean something when it mattered most," he said, his voice low. That same quiet strength that had anchored me through years of late-night sketches and self-doubt. Before I could answer, Brooke's sharp voice cut through the air. "Excuse me, I need to take this," she snapped, heels clicking frantically across the stone patio as she hurried toward the vineyard's edge. I caught fragments of her call. "No, I didn't know. And this could ruin everything." Her usual poise crumbling as her firm's PR team scrambled to manage the reputational risks of the live-streamed drama. The video of Liam's speech was already spreading like wildfire. Guests at nearby tables were glued to their phones, some whispering, others already sharing the clip. "It's at 50,000 views already," Clara whispered, leaning toward me. Her turquoise-streaked hair caught the lantern light as she showed me her screen. The hashtag #ArtFlow reveal was trending. Comments poured in, "This is iconic," and "Justice for artists." My heart swelled, a strange mix of vindication and disbelief. For years I'd felt invisible. My freelance work dismissed as cute at family dinners, the smell of roasted turkey and judgment filling our Boston dining room while Mom praised Brooke's deals. Now the world was seeing me. Not just Harper, the overlooked daughter, but Harper, the artist whose passion had inspired a movement. At the head table, Victor Lang, the art trust chairman, leaned toward my mother. His expression stern. "Eleanor," he said quietly, but loud enough for others to hear, "we need to discuss your role. This misalignment with our donors' values is concerning." My mother's face crumpled. Her fingers fumbled with her pearl necklace, a nervous habit I knew well from tense board meetings in our old home. "Victor, surely we can clarify this," she stammered. But her authority faltered. Her eyes darted to the crowd now whispering about her fall from grace. I remembered her at my high school art show, brushing off my award-winning watercolor to take a call about her latest merger. "Focus on something stable, Harper," she'd said. And now, her own stability was unraveling. Brooke returned, pale, phone clutched like a lifeline. "They're calling an emergency meeting," she muttered to my mother. "The board's furious about the optics." The optics. How fitting that she'd reduced this moment to a PR crisis. Just as she had reduced our family's art collection to a financial asset. The guests' murmurs grew louder. Some stared openly. Others filmed discreetly. A tech mogul leaned toward his date and whispered, "Didn't see that coming." The Ellis family's got some explaining to do. Their judgment mirrored all the years I'd lived under my mother's scrutiny. Her Sunday brunch voice declaring my freelance gigs unreliable, while Brooke's bonuses were the future. Yet standing there, Liam's hand in mine, I felt something new. Recognition. Not just from the crowd. From myself. My work, my passion, had inspired Artflow, a platform now celebrated worldwide. The sting of being sidelined, called unrealistic, began to loosen, replaced by quiet pride. I thought of my tiny Oakland studio, the smell of acrylics and coffee, posters for community centers, children's books, non-profit campaigns. The very things my mother dismissed were now the cornerstone of something monumental. The vineyard's energy shifted. The elegant evening had transformed into a charged spectacle. My mother's eyes met mine, just briefly. A flicker of something, regret or defiance. Then she turned back, whispering urgently to Victor. Brooke's hands trembled as she scrolled her phone, watching her carefully curated image unravel online. Liam leaned close, his breath warm against my ear. "This is just the start," he whispered. His voice, a promise of more to come. For the first time that night, I felt truly seen. Not just as an artist, but as someone whose worth never needed my mother's approval. Have you ever witnessed a moment where the tables turned completely? Drop your story in the comments. I'm reading every one. Because the consequences of that night didn't end in the vineyard. And my life was about to change forever. As the vineyard's drama faded into the night, the consequences of Liam's revelation rippled far beyond that Napa Valley evening. It reshaped my family and my world in ways I never imagined. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Each headline, each whispered rumor, a reminder of how quickly the tides had turned. My mother and Brooke, once the untouchable pillars of our family's legacy, faced a reckoning that left them scrambling. Mom quietly retreated to her summer home in the Hamptons. The flurry of social engagements vanished. Her phone, once buzzing with invitations from art world elites, now silent. I pictured her there, alone in that sprawling house, the scent of sea salt and polished wood around her, staring at the empty walls where our family's collection once hung. That collection, now under new management after Victor Lang's board voted her out. Brooke's fall was even steeper. Her firm, rattled by the viral fallout of the #Artflow reveal video, now at over 1 million views, sidelined her from the high-profile promotion she'd been chasing. Reputational concerns, her boss had cited, according to a mutual acquaintance who texted me the gossip. I could imagine Brooke in her sleek Manhattan office, the city skyline mocking her through floor-to-ceiling windows. Her gold wedding dress now just a bitter memory as she fielded urgent calls, trying to salvage her image. She had always thrived on being the golden child, the one my mother praised at family dinners. While my sketches went unnoticed, the smell of roasted lamb and her smugness filling our Boston dining room. Now her carefully curated facade was cracking, and part of me felt a pang of guilt, until I remembered her voice calling my work dreamy and unrealistic. Words that had stung for years. Meanwhile, the Harper Ellis Fund for Emerging Artists took off like a spark catching dry grass. Within a month, we received over 50 grant proposals from across the country. Painters in rural Ohio, sculptors in New Mexico, digital illustrators in Brooklyn. I spent late nights in my Oakland studio, the familiar scent of acrylics and coffee grounding me, as I reviewed applications with Liam. Each proposal felt like validation, not just of my work, but of countless artists who had been told their passion wasn't enough. One applicant, a single mom in Chicago, wrote that a $5,000 grant would let her buy supplies to teach kids in her community. Reading her words, I thought of my own early days, scraping by on ramen to afford paint, and felt a surge of purpose. Within weeks, the fund had already helped over 200 artists, covering studio rent, funding public murals, supporting creativity where it mattered most. Every story a reminder. Art isn't just a luxury. It's a lifeline. I was still a freelance artist, still hustling for commissions. But something had shifted inside me. The doubt that haunted me at family gatherings, my mother's voice echoing, "Harper, when will you get a real job?" was fading. I remembered the sting of those words at our last Thanksgiving. The clink of wine glasses. Her dismissive tone as she toasted Brooke's latest deal. Now, I walked into my studio with a new confidence. My laptop humming. Designing posters for local non-profits. Each stroke of my tablet, a quiet act of defiance. Liam's revelation had rewritten my story. Not just for the world but for myself. I was no longer the overlooked daughter. I was Harper Ellis, the artist whose passion had inspired a movement. The world noticed too. My inbox filled with messages from artists who had seen the viral video, thanking me for standing up for those who create against the odds. A San Francisco gallery reached out, offering me a solo show, something I had dreamed of since my very first exhibit. The one mom skipped for a board meeting. I could still feel the ache of that day. Standing alone in the gallery, the smell of fresh paint and hope overshadowed by her absence. Now, as I prepared for the show, I felt seen. Not just by strangers, but by the part of me that had always wondered if I was enough. Liam and I grew closer too. Our late-night talks in our cozy apartment filled with plans for the fund. Dreams of expanding its reach. His quiet strength, the same resolve I saw in his eyes that night at the vineyard, anchored me. "You were always the spark," he'd say. His hand brushing mine as we sat on our thrift store couch, the faint scent of jasmine tea in the air. The weight of my mother's judgment, once a constant shadow, was lifting, replaced by a belief in my own worth. If you're an artist watching this, share your journey in the comments. What drives you to create? Your stories keep this community alive. But the fallout from that night didn't end there. Because one final call from my mother was about to test everything I had gained. The buzz of the Harper Ellis Fund, and the viral fallout from that vineyard night, had finally settled into a new rhythm in my life. But one loose thread remained. My mother. 2 months after the wedding, as I sat in my Oakland studio, the familiar scent of acrylic paint and coffee grounding me, my phone lit up with her name. My heart skipped. A mix of dread and curiosity tightened in my chest. I hadn't spoken to her since she'd fled to the Hamptons. Her once commanding presence reduced to silence after the Art Trust Board ousted her. I let the call ring twice, my fingers hovering, before answering. "Harper," she said, her voice softer than I'd ever heard, lacking its usual polished edge. "I owe you an apology." Her words hung in the air, stirring memories of childhood in our Boston home. The smell of lavender perfume. Her rare moments of warmth, before her priorities shifted to mergers and status. "I misjudged you," she continued, her tone hesitant, each word a reluctant concession. "I didn't realize how much your art meant, or what Liam was building. I got it wrong." But there was hollowness in her voice. A careful phrasing that felt more like damage control than genuine regret. I pictured her in her Hamptons living room. Ocean breeze drifting through open windows. Her pearl necklace clutched nervously in her hand. I took a deep breath, my hand steadying on my sketchpad. The weight of years of dismissal pressing against me. "Mom," I said, my voice calm but firm, "an apology isn't enough. You sidelined me. Not just at the wedding, but for years. Calling my work a hobby. Praising Brooke while ignoring my exhibits." I remembered the sting of her absence at my first gallery show. The echo of her voice saying, "Focus on something stable, Harper," over Sunday brunches. The clink of wine glasses punctuating her judgment. "If you want to fix this," I continued, "we need family therapy. And a public statement. Not just about me, but about the artists you overlooked." There was a long pause. The kind that stretched into a lifetime. Her sigh crackled through the phone, heavy with resistance. "Harper. Therapy? A public statement? That's excessive." Her voice regained a trace of its old authority, like I'd overstepped simply by daring to set terms. "I've said I'm sorry. Isn't that enough?" But it wasn't. Her half-hearted words echoed every dismissal before. Like when she skipped my art school graduation for a board meeting, leaving me alone with my diploma and a hollow ache. I could still smell the fresh ink of my portfolio that day. Pride overshadowed by her absence. "No, Mom," I said, my voice steady now. A new strength rising from the validation of the Harper Ellis Fund's success. "It's not enough. I'm done accepting crumbs of approval. If you can't meet me halfway, we're done here." The words felt like a release. A line drawn in the sand after years of trying to prove my worth. She hesitated, then finally said, "I need time to think." The call ended, and I sat back, staring at my latest design. A vibrant mural for a community center. The silence in my studio felt different this time. Not heavy. Peaceful. I realized then, my value didn't hinge on her approval. Or anyone's. The fund, now supporting hundreds of artists, was proof of that. I thought of the single mom in Chicago, whose grant let her teach kids to paint. Her thank you letter still pinned to my studio wall. My mother's words, unrealistic, embarrassing, had once cut deep. But they no longer defined me. I was Harper Ellis. Artist. Wife. Soon-to-be mother. And my worth came from within. From the lives I touched through my work. And the love Liam and I shared. That truth settled into my bones. Warm. Unshakable. Like the glow of fairy lights from that Napa night. Now a distant memory of triumph. Setting boundaries with family is never easy. Have you ever had to draw a line like that? Share your story in the comments. I'm reading every one. But my journey wasn't over yet. Because the final chapter of this story was about to bring it all full circle. The peace I found after setting boundaries with my mother settled into my life like a soft morning light, illuminating corners I hadn't realized were dim. A few months after that tense phone call, sitting in our Oakland apartment, the familiar scent of jasmine tea and acrylic paint filling the air, I discovered something that shifted my world again. I was pregnant. The test sat on our thrift store coffee table, its 2 pink lines a quiet promise of a new chapter. I touched my stomach, joy and nervousness washing over me, picturing Liam's face when I told him. His blue eyes lighting up, the same way they had at the vineyard when he stood up for me. This baby, our baby, would grow up knowing their worth didn't depend on anyone's approval. A lesson hard won. From that Napa night. The Harper Ellis Fund for Emerging Artists continued to grow, like a canvas coming to life, stroke by stroke. By spring, we'd funded over 300 artists. A muralist in Detroit transforming abandoned buildings. A poet in Seattle publishing her first chapbook. Each grant felt like a ripple, carrying forward the belief that art wasn't less than but different. A vital force. Something that could heal, inspire, connect. I thought back to those early freelance days. Scraping by in our tiny apartment. The smell of instant coffee and doubt heavy in the air. Wondering if my mother had been right to call my work unstable. But now, those struggles felt like foundation stones. Proof that passion could build legacies. Not just paychecks. I was still the same Harper. Still hustling for freelance gigs. Still sketching late into the night. But I carried myself differently. The sting of my mother's words, unrealistic, embarrassing, had faded. Replaced by the quiet strength of knowing my art had sparked a movement. I remembered family dinners in our Boston home. The clink of wine glasses as Mom praised Brooke's deals, while my sketchbook sat ignored beside my plate. Those moments once made me question my path. Now, they were only echoes. Powerless against the reality of the fund's impact, and the community rallying around it. My upcoming solo show at a San Francisco gallery, booked after the viral video, was another milestone. A chance to show the world who I was. Not who I wasn't. Liam and I spent evenings planning the fund's future. Our thrift store couch creaking under us as we dreamed of art camps for kids. Scholarships for low-income creators. His quiet resolve, the same fire I'd seen when he took the mic at the wedding, anchored me. "You've always been enough," he'd say, his hand resting on mine. And I believed him now. Not just because of his words, but because I'd learned it myself. My mother never called again. Her silence was confirmation of the boundary I had set. But it no longer hurt. I'd found my worth in the artists we supported. In the life growing inside me. In the love that carried me through. The biggest lesson from that night under the Napa Valley stars wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about proving others wrong. It was about defining your own value. No one, not even family, gets to decide what makes you worthy. Your passion. Your choices. Your art. They're enough. Even when the world calls them less. I'm sharing this story because I know some of you are out there. Fighting to be seen, fighting to believe in your own path. Keep going. You're not alone. Thank you for following this journey. For every like, comment, and share. It's built a community I never imagined. If you've ever chosen passion over prestige, drop your story in the comments. I'm reading every one. Artists. Teachers. Dreamers. What's the most dismissive thing someone said about your work? And if this resonated, hit that subscribe button to hear more stories like this. I'll see you in the next one. Hold your boundaries tight. And keep creating.